Hello and welcome to the Old Garage number 13. I'm Wild Bill, and we do have some questions. These are going to be from the Giovanni Agnelli episode and the one on Herbert Austin, and oddly enough also from the Old Garage. I mean, I'm supposed to be answering questions on these episodes and I'm causing them instead. I must be doing something wrong. But also we're going to go over some of the answers that we got from the 500 subs, a shout out and some admins. So while I get photobombed by a cat, let's go ahead and get started. A question regarding the Agnelli episode, Craig Hagenbrook. He asked, what inventions or advancements did the Italians make? Regarding cars, of course. Well, made quite a few. And in fact, the Italian automakers of the vintage era were particularly known for two things. One was engine design. Making engines faster, and also the overall design of the vehicle, and making almost a primitive form of unibody construction, as it were, as early as 1905. And we're going to go over a lot of those things with many of these Italian inventors and Italian companies and what they did. But Italians, car manufacturers back in the day in the vintage era, were known for being fast, and they were also known for being light. So, and they contributed a lot of technology towards producing that, and we're going to be talking about those specific technologies, cars, etc. We will be doing that, don't worry. Same episode, Gabriel F. asked the question, what's your favorite Italian car make that has existed into the modern era? Well, it doesn't give me a long list, but it's an obvious choice, and that would be Lancia. Great, beautiful cars of the vintage era, started in 1907, I believe, still in production today. And yeah, believe me, we'll be talking about Lancia. It's only a matter of time. Okay, Zippy Destrange. He asked a question as, do I plan on doing a deep dive on engineering, like engines, braking systems, axles, trans, wheels, other mechanical devices on the vehicle? Well, the answer is yes and no. Yes, the thing is that there's so many of topics like this, and these questions have been going on for a long time. That's why I started doing the specials, was to start to hit some of those. A lot of the things that were early inventions, like the different types of axles and such. I mean, you can look at the episode on Didion Bouton or on Amedée Bollée, and you'll see info about some of those inventions. So doing now is I am doing some of those as special episodes, where it's going to be 15, 20 minutes long, or maybe even longer, who knows. But once I'm really finished with the 19th century biographies, which I'm getting close to, that's when I'm going to be diving into the cars themselves, some of the more specific events, some of the rivalries between companies, and the inventions specifically of the 19th century. And then I'm going to turn the page and go into the 20th century. So I can tell you that folks are pretty much asking a lot of those questions, and hey, please keep doing it, because that's also letting me know, what you're interested in, what you want to know more about, and as I can incorporate more and more of that into the episodes. But to just do, for example, a single episode about the wheel, which I actually posted recently. I only took it to a certain point, because once you get to about 1900, it just goes all over the place. So there's really no way I could do an episode like that justice, in the amount of time that I have every week to put into the channel. So I've got to do them in their little episodes. But we're going to get those things done. We will get there. We got years to go, don't worry. Okay, Vaclav Fate, he asked this one, and he says, what were the beginning of indicators? I know there are still rules for indicating changes of direction and overtaking with your hand, and that was, I imagine, how it originally started, but can you tell us more about how we went from waving one's hand to blinking orange lights? Well, In a car, actually, the whole, right hand, left hand stop thing with your hand is something that's kind of American. Uh, Most other country, like European countries, before you had indicators of any kind, when cars were first coming out, or even for that matter, if you were driving a carriage, a horse-drawn carriage in a city, you would carry a wand on a stick. A wand like a placard that was on a stick or a flag, and you would use the flag or the placard on the stick to indicate what you were actually going to be doing, how you're going to be changing lanes. And the hand signals actually that they used to teach in driver's ed, at least when I went through that in the 80s, were actually came from how you would actually wave that, baton indicator. The next development for turn indication was called a trafficator. And this didn't come about until the 20th century. And what a trafficator is basically a mechanical arm that's built into the body of the vehicle that the driver could operate inside the cab of the vehicle. And the trafficator would let someone know if the vehicle was turning or stopping. And these basically were just a mechanical version of the wands that were used, but they were very common. All the way through up to World War I, and even after World War I, they persisted even into the 1930s on many really high-end luxury vehicles, as well as on commercial trucks and such. But the blinking light sort of thing to indicate, that invention started in the 1930s, and we will talk more in detail about that once I get to that point, because there are a number of American innovators that we want to talk about. We got a lot of ground to cover first. Okay, James MacArthur says, so with all these founding fathers of the automotive history, who is the one you most admire and why? That's not an easy question to answer, actually, because I absolutely just dig Albert de Dion, just because the guy was just nuts, but also very clever despite him being insane. But he's definitely one of the top on my list. I just love the story of Herbert Austin. I always have, just because of where he came from. I also just totally admired Henry Leland and what he did. So it's a toss-up between those three. If I'm going to have to pick a top three, or pick one of them, it was going to come from one of those three. So, yeah, one of those three. Okay, supercharged 350, supercharged 350. Got to say it twice, I think. It says, before World War I, what kind of seat coverings were used? Were they all handmade, and where was foam first used in seats? Well, I'll let you know, the foam in seats, that's not until well into the late 30s and 40s, and didn't become common in the 50s, till the 50s. But the first cars, the seats in the cars were basically off-the-shelf seats that you could buy for carriages and wagons. And they were almost usually made of leather or canvas, depending on just how industrial your wagon or carriage was. Those were the most common. Well, I mean, you would get some cloth ones, but they were more rare. Most typically leather. You would have a wood backing. Then you would have, in some cases, a wire frame inside the backing, but they were usually stuffed with straw, or they were stuffed with sawdust in some cases. In many cases, gravel was used as stuffing. Crazy, yeah. When you get to the agricultural stuff, yeah, they'd actually fill the thing with sand. Those were very common. When you think of a bean bag, well, yeah, you would have sometimes something like that. Husks, or not the actual beans, but like peanut shells. You could find a seat stuffed with those, and things like that. But that's how they started, and it wasn't until car manufacturers started building their own coaches or car bodies that weren't, so much like a coach or a carriage, that you would have to actually build a a separate seat for it. Did they even bother doing it? I mean, any car company could go to any warehouse and buy any amount of chairs and benches for any size of wagon or carriage that they wanted and walk off with them. So, so it's not until really the after the 20th century, the 1900s, 1910s, are you going to start seeing seats that are actually manufactured for cars. And even at that point in time, they're made very much the same way that your furniture seats were going to be made. Usually going to be leather. Very rarely would you see anything else other than leather at that point. And they would be stuffed and made much custom to fit that car, but be made to the same way. They would be pleated and buttoned and stuffed with straw or peanut shells or whatever. So foam, not until you're getting close to 1940 before you start seeing synthetics in cars. Okay, now we had quite a few folks jump on the thing about what was the oldest car you've ever driven, and because it's not, not the first car you ever drove, but the oldest car you ever drove, and quite frankly, I don't even remember the first car I ever drove because I was too young. I was just excited about doing it. I think it was a Chevy, but I don't remember the make, model, or the model or year. First of all, asking that question really made me feel old, because so many of these cars that were mentioned as the oldest thing you've ever driven are cars that I remember when they were brand new. And I was already driving at the time, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Some of them stuck out. Let's see. Daniel Silverthorne, he said he would barely count it as driving, since he only moved it from one area of a garage to put on a lift, but it was a 1928 Rolls-Royce Phantom. Okay, well, if it was a 1928, then it was actually a Phantom, and it was a Phantom 2, because that's when the Phantom 2 superseded, was in 28. Beautiful car. Oh yeah, dig it, dig it, dig it, dig it. Now then, Kent Feverly, he jumped on there and stated that his oldest car driven was a '54 GMC pickup, and it would climb a small wall, climb a wall in first gear, straight six. Yeah, and I mentioned that it was in fact a 1954 GMC that I experienced my first car accident in. I was passenger, my dad was driving. We were on we were actually leaving a dump, and it was a muddy patch, raining, and it was just nasty. And he hit the brakes, nothing happened, and the truck just kept moving, went down this hill and smacked into a tree. And my head went into the dashboard, and I've still got yep, that's one of them there. Still got the scars from that one. I was like 6 years old. But that brought back memories, terrifying memories. Now, Nick Bruni, he said that he had a '55 Dodge Royal Lancer. Those things were cool. I remember seeing those on the road back in the day. In fact, that's the thing about Dodge. From the 50s to about 1966, Dodges either looked really, really cool or they were unbelievably ugly. There was nothing in the middle. So have your own opinion about the Lancer. Okay, so also want to do a shout out here, and because if you're watching this show, obviously you're into cars in some way. And there's one thing that I like doing sometimes is I love seeing automotive stupidity. And what I mean by that is this, is that in the modern world, there are people who are either too ignorant or stupid, or perhaps both, to really own an automobile. And there's proof of this found in the garages and repair shops all over the world. And which is why, if you would like to see this sort of stuff, you've got to check out this channel, and that's Just Rolled In. And I have to admit, in most cases, somehow these things may have actually rolled in, but in many cases, there's no way these vehicles got there under their own power, or if they did, it was on a wing and a prayer. And you have still photos as well as videos that are submitted to his channel by various mechanics all over the country and all over the world, in fact. and some great clips showing just what happens if you don't maintain your car, if you don't actually watch what you're doing, if you don't look at the road and end up saying, oh, I hit a bump, and half your car's gone. Some of the stuff that is on his channel is absolutely hilarious, and it's definitely worth a watch. And you're going to have, if you like cars and you like seeing people being stupid, it's a fun watch. So that's what I have for the episode other than admin, and the admin is actually pretty simple today. It is that I am going to be probably not too distant future, provided that they don't do something stupid with COVID, have an opportunity to do an on-site video soon. Probably going to be filming sometime in October, but in any case, be on the lookout for it. And again, I hope they don't make me start wearing masks to do these episodes, and I hope you enjoyed being my fish photobombing me. And we'll see you next time for the Old Garage and for the next Vintage Car History. So we'll see you then. Peace.